Welcome, this guide is about the explosive shot Deadeye. The build revolves around shockingly shockburst rounds, which is currently one of the strongest skills in the game to deal with bosses. It's a crossbow ability that releases a deadly pulse upon hitting a shocked or electrocuted enemy, but the skill itself is unable to apply neither. It can, however, freeze even when dealing mostly lightning damage thanks to the 3 dragons helmet. It shuffles the elemental damage, elemental ailment dependencies. For lightning damage, it's freeze buildup instead of shock. To apply shock, you will deal fire damage from now on. And that's one of the roles of the explosive shot. It deals mostly fire damage. Its second role is hunting down the small game because its explosions have large AoE and high damage. Combine it with 3 herald skills which synergize extremely well with each other and the 3 dragons. Deadeye specializes in projectile type abilities and fast movement. Point blank and endless munitions will improve your DPS, especially in close combat. Gathering Winds and Wind Ward enhance your mobility and durability. This effect pairs up well with high evasion rating and Wind Dancer. Use Explosive Shot to deal with all kinds of enemies running around the map. If the enemy is too tough to deal with this way, switch to Shock Burst rounds, but not before it's shocked. Against the most difficult enemies, cast Voltaic Mark and use Emergency Reload to boost your DPS. The build is not extraordinarily durable, but it does have high evasion and good mobility. You will have to rely on that. After you acquire a high level gear, allocate acrobatics to evade all hits, mix it with maximum life and resistances so that you won't get one-shotted. Clear speed is one of the best in the game thanks to the powerful heralds and great AoE of the ability. It's called Explosive Shot, not without reason. Boss damage is high too, but keeping a beefy boss constantly shocked causes fluctuation in the damage output. It's all rare items with a cheap, unique helmet, so the price of the build can be adjusted depending on your budget. The 3 dragons is mandatory. You can hunt for good corrupted variants since it's cheap and common. There are no other uniques that would be specifically good here, but many evasion pieces will fit the build anyway, if you cannot yet afford a fine rare, and if your resistances are sorted out. The 3 dragons helmet will cause explosive shot to shock with ease since you deal mostly fire damage. You can then use shock burst rounds, which will freeze bosses, as the skill deals a lot of lightning damage. The helmet also causes your herald skills to proc each other. Prioritize physical DPS on your weapons. It will all be converted later to multiple other elemental damage types. Projectile damage is not very important. Shock bursts, pulse, and explosive shots explosions are not projectiles. Attributes will be crucial, a bit over 100 intelligence with more than 200 dexterity and strength. You will need 150 spirit to host all 5 buff skills listed, as each costs 30 spirit. Look for a basic crossbow with high physical DPS and modifiers for added and increased elemental damage. Getting 2 crossbows, one for explosive shot and another one for shock burst rounds, is recommended, but don't rush it. Good crossbows are expensive after all. They're both very similar, although dyed crossbows are better with explosive shots as they can accommodate an additional bolt. Body armor, or jacket as it's sometimes called, offers a lot of maximum life and evasion. Focus on these prefixes. Spirit is a prefix too, that's why we recommend getting most of it from amulet rather than body armor. Gloves occupy a valuable item slot since they can roll mods for attack speed and added flat damage of all types to attacks. The mod that's unique to boots is movement speed. They offer a lot of it. Not much here else but the basics. An amulet offers spirit, which is hard to get. Attributes and other fundamental stats can be found here too. Rings are particularly useful in an attack build as they can roll added elemental physical damage to attacks or increased elemental damage. Rare belt. Here look mainly for the maximum life, resistances and strength. Other stats are not so important. Search for damage modifiers listed here on your jewels. Chance to shock and shock duration will help against tough bosses. Explosive shot deals mostly fire damage, which will shock. It loads only 1 or 2 bolts per clip, but in turn its damage and AoE is high. Link it up with scatter shot, mobility, rising tempest, fire penetration and conduction. Such setup will keep you mobile while upholding the skill's role as a clearing and ailment inflicting tool. Shock burst rounds is the main damaging ability against bosses. Put all the best support gems here. Its most potent component is the pulse that's triggered against shocked enemies, not a projectile. link it with Primal Armament, Concentrated Effect, Lightning Infusion, Elemental Focus, and Fresh Clip. If you want to freeze bosses, as one usually does, replace Elemental Focus with Heft. Herald of Thunder converts 100% of physical damage to lightning. It's also a big help when clearing. It fires a lightning bolt upon enemies you hit after killing a shocked enemy. It will deal mainly lightning damage and freeze. Link it with Innovate, Lightning Mastery, Ice Bite, Execute, and Glaciation. Herald of Ice converts 100% of physical damage to cold. Upon killing a Phorazon enemy, often thanks to Herald of Thunder, it explodes with cold damage, which ignites. Link it with Magnified Effect, Cold Mastery, Immolate, Cold Penetration, and Longshot. Herald of Ashes passive effect, which converts 100% of physical damage to fire, is crucial, since fire damage shocks, thus enabling Shock Burst rounds pulse. Killed enemy spread ignite on death. Link it with Fire Mastery to deal a bit more damage with the Burn on Kill effect. Wind Dancer grants more evasion, but breaks after getting hit with a melee attack. It hits nearby enemies upon breaking. Link it with Blind and Mayim to emaciate these opponents. Voltaic Mark. Marked enemy is easier to shock, which has an increased effect on them. The damaging part is not important, you'll use it only against bosses. Link it with Persistence. Use Emergency Reload to instantly reload your crossbow and empower the next clip. Good with fresh clip support on your Shock Burst rounds. Link it with Premeditation. Enemies have reduced elemental ailment threshold with Overwhelming Presence. In the Valley of Titans, go for the mana recovery from flasks first, but after upgrading the belt with a second charm slot, switch it for the charm charges. The first Venom Crypts will be a good opportunity to get some extra mana regeneration rate. Shock Burst can drain a lot of mana. Other options are not that good on an evasion character. In the second Venom Crypts, get +5 to all attributes, since you will need a lot of them. The skill tree is a source of evasion, elemental damage with attacks, area damage, attack speed, and attributes. Allocate crossbow nodes and herald related passives, with the small nodes for a reservation cost near herald damage passive. You won't need as much spirit, so get them too if you struggle with that. Avoid projectile damage, these are not very good. If you have any spare points, go for the jewel socket. The only keystone to keep an eye out for is acrobatics. And that's all for this guide. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more content.